So what's the best processor in November 2020 for gaming and productivity work? Well, I could take you through this long list of processors from budget, mid to high end to extreme high end, which is what I would usually do. But for November 2020 is basically a choice between just two processors, and those are the 5600X and the 5900X. Why? Because AMD has literally blown away the competition, blown away its previous 3000 series processors. The Zen 3 5000 series processors basically blow everything away. And of the series, two processors stand out, the 5600X and the 5900X, in terms of performance and value for money. 5600X is the 6-core processor that is best suited for gaming applications given its high single core performance and decent multi-core, and price $299. Now the 5600X is supposed to compete against the 10600K down here, but it outperforms it on single core and multi-core by over 20%, so there's no comparison. So the 5600X is not competing against the 10600K. Instead, it's competing against Intel's best processor, the 10900K, that costs $599. Of course, it doesn't beat it on multi-core because the 10900K has got 10 cores, whilst the 5600X has got 6 cores. But look at the difference in single core performance, which is what gamers should focus on. 609 to 500 to 539. That is a huge difference in performance for a processor that costs near half as much. And in terms of gameplay, well, you can see the FPS in this selection of games there, where the 5600X beats the 10900K in virtually every game. In fact, on this list, the 10900K just beats it on Assassin's Creed. And this is Intel's best processor, best retail market processor, that costs $500. I'm sure the price is going to drop now given the competition that the 3600X presents. So there you have it. If you're looking for gaming, don't get the 10900K, don't get a 3000 series. It's the 5600X, 6-core processor, 12 thread, $299. It destroys its competitive processor from Intel, the 10600K, whilst it wipes the floor with the 10900K, Intel's best. So that's what you would aim for in terms of gaming, and why. Just look at the FPS. Total war 201 against 191 for the 10900K, whilst the 10600K is way behind. It's like it's on a league of its own. The 5600X is competing and beating the 10900K. So if you're looking for a new system for gaming, then it has to be the 5600X. Yes, AMD's released other processors like the 5800X, but that's not good value for money because they want you to pay $150 more for just 2 extra cores. Whereas for 6 extra cores, it's just another $100 for the 5900X, which is the best value for money productivity processor at $549. There's nothing on the market from Intel unless you go for something like the 10980XE, but even that, it does not beat it on single core, comes nowhere near, and multi-core is pretty close, and that's the current price is $829, so it's over nearly $250 more. The 5900X, in terms of performance, single core 631, so it's a great gaming processor, plus 8200 on multi-core. And remember, these are all stock benchmarks and FPS. There's no overclocking, so if you got good cooling, you could overclock by at least 5%, but probably more like 10% depending on your cooling. So these are all stock Cinebench scores and FPS. So you got the 5900X, which is the best value for money productivity processor, 12 core, 24 thread. Intel's 1000K, it comes nowhere near. Look, 8,200 against 6,400. And single core, 631 against 540. There's just no comparison. Now there is the 5950X, which is a powerful processor, but it's not entirely good value for money. Because whilst the jump from the 5800X was $100 for another 4 cores to 5900X, for another 4 cores to the 5950X, it's a jump of $250. So in terms of the range of processors, the 5950X is not good value for money when compared against the 5900X, which is what you would get. Similarly, the 5800X is not good value for money because it's a $150 jump from the 5600X for just an extra 2 cores. It's not good value for money, whereas the jump from a 5800X to 5900X is an extra $100 for 4 more cores. So obviously AMD does not want you to buy the 5800X because it's priced horribly. It's not priced to sell. So basically the thinking in AMD marketing department is, we want people to buy the 5600X because it wipes the floor with Intel's best in gaming, and we want people to buy the 5900X because it wipes the floor with Intel in productivity, whilst the 5800X is basically people thinking they want something more powerful than a 5600X will contemplate a 5800X, but then do the math. What's the point of paying an extra $150 for just 2 extra cores? Well, if I pay another $100, I get 4 more cores, like 6 in total more for the 5900X. Similarly, people would only go for the 5950X if they're not bothered about value for money. They just want the most powerful processor in terms of single core performance and multi-core. Though if you overclock the 5950X, the problem is the single core score drops. Whereas for the 59X, the drops is less likely. This is due to thermal throttling. You've got so many cores. So you want to contemplate that if you're thinking of overclocking these high core processors. The single core scores will drop marginally. Well, somewhat. Depends on how much you overclock. So basically, you go for the 5950X if you're not too bothered about the single core dropping, whilst you want to maximize multi-core performance for productivity work. Same for the 5900X. You can overclock it by a couple of hundred megahertz, probably even more depending on your cooling, and get, say, probably get 9,000 on the Cinebench core. Easily you should be able to get, depending on your cooling. Similarly, you'll be able to get easily 11,000 on the 5950X. Again, depending on your cooling, but the single core scores will drop. Whilst obviously for the 5600X, you want to maximize the single core, so you won't want to overclock it too much. You want to keep it finely balanced and make sure you got excellent cooling to drive down those temperatures, because that is what will throttle single core performance. So you want to, if you're thinking of overclocking the 5600X, if you're getting one, then you'd want to make sure you spend extra on cooling to maximize the single core score. You could probably achieve 630 of the 5900X anyway. So there's no real point of getting a 5900X if you're thinking about gaming, because you're going to be paying an extra $250 and it's not going to deliver any significant difference in single core, especially if you can overclock the 5600X. Same goes for the 5900X. There's no real reason to get the 5950X because you can overclock it for multi-core performance. You'd only really want to get it if money's not an option and you just want the best, the maximum multi-core performance. Then you get a 5950X. So that's why for gaming, 5600X, no competition. The best processor by miles. You just look at the FPS. There is no competition between the 10900K. Forget the 10600K. The 10900K doesn't compete. It only beats in a few games, something like Assassin's Creed here. I think is it Red Redemption? It beats it in that. But otherwise, the 5600X beats it, and this is before it's been overclocked. Whilst for productivity, obviously it has to be the 5900X. It's got massive potential for overclocking for multi-core performance. Yes, there will be a drop in single core, but if that's what you're aiming for, then get it, and also you'll still get excellent single core performance for gaming. It's not like Intel's 10980XE where for 18 cores you have high multi-core, decent multi-core performance, but look at the single core, it's rubbish. 480, so it wouldn't be good for gaming. That's swings and roundabouts. Whereas for the Zen 3 5000 series, there isn't any. They've got good multi-core performance and single core, so they can't be beat. Whilst if you've got money to burn, then get the 5950X. And I've also put two other processors that Intel may or may not, I keep saying Intel, AMD may or may not release in say 3 to 6 months time. They'll probably will release the 5300X as a budget end processor. That I estimate will still give you a Cinebench score of over 600, so that will still wipe the floor with Intel. It would probably beat the 10900K in at least half the games, and that's a 10 core, 4 core against 10 core, and it will definitely beat the 10600K in virtually every game, given its high single core benchmark score of 604 against 503 for the 10600K. There's no comparison. And there is the potential for a 5700X, but I don't think they'll release that, because that'll be another dud, same as the 5800X. Because obviously AMD want you to buy either the 5600X or the 5900X. They basically want people contemplating a 5800X to upselling them to a 5900X, which makes more sense. The 5800X makes no sense. If you're thinking again of 5600X and then you think, I could do with an extra couple of cores, I'll get the 5800X. But then if you're going to get the 5900X, you might as well pay an extra $100 to get the 5900X for 6 more cores rather than just 2 for an extra $150. Do remember to subscribe for more CPU videos, and my next system will be probably a 5950X, but I've got to think about this. Do I want to go for maximizing the number of cores, or do I want to go for a 5900X and look for maximum cooling to overclock it? So you probably get 9,000 score out of it. At this moment I'm leaning towards getting a 5950X for longevity. I expect my next system to last me at least 4 years without upgrading the already can't upgrade the processors, because this is the final processors that will fit in the AM4 motherboards, so there's no going anything higher than a 5950X. So do remember to subscribe for new videos for CPU performance benchmarking and which to buy, where in November 2020 it's the 5600X and the 5900X with no competition from Intel.